Today, our discussion will be on the sources of unemployment. When we say sources of unemployment, there are four main sources of unemployment. The first one is new entrants. The second one is re-entrants. Number 3 is job losers, and number 4 is job leavers. So those are the four sources of unemployment. To understand that sources of unemployment, we will use our stock flow model as shown here. I hope you still remember our last discussion where we derived the understanding of this diagram. Now, based on that understanding, let's first look at the sources of unemployment. To describe the first two sources of unemployment, namely new entrants and re-entrants, it is shown by this arrow. The arrow that is pointing from those not in the labor force, we have notation N there, to this box, where we call this box as the unemployment groups. So this arrow is the arrow pointing to the first two sources of unemployment. The first one is the new entrants, and number 2 is the re-entrants. Who are the new entrants? The new entrants are those before they are not in the labor force because maybe they are under the category of institutionalized. A bulk of them are university students. They are not in the labor force while they are studying, and once they finish, like many of you, later you will go to the job market actively looking for jobs, but temporarily you are unemployed. So in that case, you can see the movement here, and the fraction of PNU, I hope you know how to calculate this fraction now, will tell us the fraction of workers in the labor market who are maybe in the category of new entrants and then re-entrants. The second one is re-entrants. Re-entrants are those who also start from not in the labor force. A good example of this is like the retired people. When they retire, they are no longer in the job market. They are now not in the labor force, but because they could be still healthy, they have a lot of experience and skills, they think they are still productive, then they are looking for jobs. In that category, while still looking and still not getting to the job suitable, they are fall into the category of unemployment. So that's another example. So here we have the first two sources of unemployment. The other two sources of unemployment is indicated by this arrow, the arrow that points from those employed to the unemployed. Again, if we do the calculation, maybe you can find the fraction here, PEU, because this fraction will tell us the fraction, or you can change to percentage of those in these two categories. What are they? They are the job leavers and job losers. Maybe I write number 3, job leavers, and number 4 are the job losers. Who are the job leavers? They are first employed, then they may be looking for or already being offered a good job offer in another place, and therefore they leave the existing job. While in that transitional position, they are being unemployed. So that's what we call job leavers. And then for number 3, we have a category called job losers. Job losers, first they are employed, they lose the job, then they are unemployed. Job losers could be many. For example, in the recession in the economy, COVID-19 crisis, we may find a lot of job losers. Now, you see from the discussion, we find the 4 sources of unemployment. In this table, we can see the sources of unemployment for United States for many years, various years here. we start from 1970 up until 2012. This category of data, because it is based on time, we call this as the time series data. The first column gives us the information on just the overall unemployment rate. So that's the general information that we usually get when we calculate the unemployment rate. More detail that describe who's who in this unemployment rate figure are given by the rest of the columns here. As I mentioned, we have, for example, column that indicates the category called job losers. And then next we have the category that we call the job leavers, then re-entrants, and the last column is the new entrants. So now, what we can say about all these figures? A few things for you to note. If you add horizontally these figures, you should get to 100. Because these four categories are those people who are unemployed. When we want to analyze the issue of unemployment in an economy, knowing the sources of unemployment is very important, because let's look at maybe the latest year available here. We take 2012 here. You compare across all these four sources of unemployment. 2012, the level of unemployment rate in the United States is 8.1%. And of this 8.1%, we want to know which category contributes the most to the unemployment rate figure in the economy. So if we look at this, we find that job losers are the main category, while the least category out of this four is the job leavers, only 7.7% in this case, right? The second highest is the re-entrants, and then number 3 is new entrants. Now, why this information is important? Because in drafting policy, we need to provide the right policy to tackle the issue. Obviously, in 2012, the main issue contributing to high unemployment is due to job losers. And we must know why people are losing their jobs. If it is due to recession, firms are shutting down, then a policy to address that problems need to be implemented. It is wrong if you, instead of addressing those problems of firms shutting down, instead you focus on providing job opportunities to new entrants, asking firms to offer jobs to fresh graduates. Firms are not ready for that. Firms are struggling. In fact, firms are throwing out workers. So knowing which category contributing to the level of unemployment is therefore important. And if we observe each of these four categories over a certain period like this, we can see the structural change in the economy. Just what I have highlighted earlier, when we want to address the issue of unemployment, it is important to focus on the level of unemployment and to understand the determinants or factors that explain the level of unemployment. A quick way to understand this is by going to the sources of unemployment. Now, moving to this slide, it is still based on a stock flow model of the labor market. By understanding the stock flow model, we can derive the unemployment rate function as shown here, given by equation 14.2. For this one, we will assume that the labor markets are balanced. This is what I have mentioned earlier, the concept of the steady state level of unemployment. What do we mean by balance or steady state here? This is when, over a long run period, people who lose their jobs and people who get jobs, they are equal in the long run. With that assumption, we find that unemployment rate in the economy is a function of the following factors. And we have derived, using the stock flow model of education, the fractions here. For example, the first one, the fraction of unemployed who leave the labor force. And for that fraction, we have on top of this the positive sign. That means it has a positive effect on unemployment rate. That means the higher the fraction of unemployed who leave the labor force, the higher will be the unemployment rate. The second factor here is explained by the following notes. P and E. It is the fraction of those not in the labor force who enter the labor force and find employment. So in this case, it has a negative relationship with the unemployment rate. That means the higher this fraction, the lower the unemployment rate will be. Note that we have 6 fractions here because there are 6 arrows in the stock flow model. Please observe each of them and figure out how each of them explains the unemployment rate in the economy. And the last part about the stock flow model of the labor market is for us to realize that the social concern over any given level of unemployment involve 2 important things. The first one is the incidence of unemployment. By incidence, we are referring to the fraction of people who becomes unemployed. In particular, you can recall the sources of unemployment. That's the incidence. And then the second important issue about unemployment is to address the duration. So we need to tackle these 2 concerns. Who are those involved in the incidence of unemployment and how long they are in that state? Definitely, we want to shorten the duration of the unemployment. The rest of the slide explain the importance of measures, and by measures here, policies, right? Policies needs to know the incidence and also need to reduce the duration. I think that's all for this time. Inshallah, in the next session, we will go to the types of unemployment and we will pick certain theories and explain the relevance of those theories to certain types of unemployment. Inshallah, see you again. Wassalamualaikum.